I've had some time to sit on it. Last night definitely was not the game that a lot of Nuggets fans were looking forward to. The defense was atrocious. The three-pointers were bombing. And the Nuggets, yet again, unable to come away with a victory in the clutch. But the question that I ask myself, and I think we need to ask each other, is this a repeatable process? And what about last night can the Nuggets change going forward? There's a lot to talk about. There's a lot to get into. Y'all know what time it is. This is Swiper, and this is Locked On Nuggets.
You are Locked On Nuggets, your daily Denver Nuggets podcast. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
What's going on, y'all? Welcome to Locked On Nuggets. This is your daily Denver Nuggets podcast. I hope you're having a great start to your day so far. I know. It was not the game that you were looking forward to. You were hoping for a dominant win for your Denver Nuggets. But you know what, y'all? There's still a lot of good things that took place last night, and I do think the Nuggets will bounce back very quickly tomorrow night. By the way, y'all know, I'm Swiper. This is Locked On Nuggets. This is part of the Locked On Podcast Network. But now, the number one sports podcast network, man. Locked On is on the way up. We are so glad to be here with you every single day, bringing you your favorite NBA content. So, y'all, last night, I've had a lot of time to think about how last night's game transpired. And even during the game, it felt like surely the shooting is going to have to calm down, because the Chicago Bulls yesterday, they started 11 of 20 from three. 11 of 20 from three. That is stupendously great. They were shooting 55% from three in the first 16 minutes of the game. And if you remember the game flow, Jokic went out with a lead at the top of the first quarter. But things surely got out of hand really, really quickly. And when that happened, Chicago Bulls went on a 16-2 run. 16-2 at the top of the second quarter. And one of the things that I talked to Matt Moore about, and I asked him about earlier on in the season, was Jonas Valanciunas going to be an every night player for this Denver Nuggets team? Now, I agree he's good enough to play every night. But the question became, when you play versus teams like this, and they're going to load up on spacing the floor, when they put Jalen Smith in the game, and they had Ayo Dosunmu in the game, Javon Carter was in the game, and they still would have Kevin Huerter or Buzelis or whoever was on the floor, or Dalen Terry. When they went to these lineups, would the Nuggets be able to get away with playing two centers that are not necessarily the most able-bodied perimeter players there are in the league? And functionally, it's very similar to 2023, and I know a lot of y'all remember this game. Remember, the Brooklyn Nets came into Denver, and they went 5 out with Dorian Finney-Smith, Cam Johnson. I can't remember who else was all on that roster, but they were bombing threes versus the Denver Nuggets. Absolutely bombing threes. And especially at that time, the Nuggets had not won an NBA championship yet. And so there were a lot of questions about the roster and about the team, and if they were going to be able to get it done, if they were going to be able to show up, all of these questions. And what ended up happening is, in that game, I want to say they lost 122 to 120 versus the Brooklyn Nets. And so literally, y'all, this is where my mind went after watching yesterday. That team had Mikal Bridges, Dorian Finney-Smith, Cam Johnson, Nick Claxton, Spencer Dinwiddie. But remember what they did, they took Spencer Dinwiddie out, very similar to how the Chicago Bulls took Vucevic out, and they put Royce O'Neal in the game. And they basically went Dorian Finney-Smith and Royce O'Neal in a small ball 4-5. And in that game, Mikal Bridges went 3 of 8 from 3. Dorian Finney-Smith was 5 of 7 from 3. Cameron Johnson, 2 of 6 from 3. But off the bench, Royce O'Neal went 3 of 7 from 3. Joe Harris came in the game, went 3 of 6 from 3. Seth Curry came in the game and went 1 of 3 from 3. And the Nuggets lost that game very similar fashion, where they had 120 points scored, like they had last night, 127, but they lost by 2 because they lost the three-point battle. In that game, by the way, Jokic had 35 points, 20 rebounds, and 11 assists. Are you catching a common theme here? Jokic versus the Nets in 2023 in that game they lost, similarly because of three-pointers, was a plus 14 in that game, 35 points, 20 rebounds, and 11 assists. And then now, you look at last night, Jokic in that game, 36 points, 18 rebounds, 13 assists, plus 10. In that game that they lost versus the Nets in 23, he was a plus 14 and they still lost. So my point is that this is shown to be a way and an avenue to beat the Denver Nuggets. If you are able to overwhelm them with three-pointers, with overwhelm their size, with outside shot making, you can beat them. But again, I want y'all to note that these are teams that are like fringe playoff, not playoff teams that are able to do this. The Washington Wizards did this to them as well last year twice. So even as good as the Denver Nuggets defense has been, which has been a lot better this year, the Nuggets are still susceptible to teams that go on really hot shooting streaks, and especially they can take advantage of the fact that the way the Nuggets played a pick-and-roll defense, and this was probably the main story defensively yesterday. When you watch that game, they were playing a very deep drop versus Josh Giddey in this game, extremely deep drop. And one of the reasons that they were doing that is because they just didn't want him and want the Bulls to take advantage of the short roll, which creates open three opportunities in the corner or on the wing and forces you into crazy rotation. Now, me personally, I probably would have changed up my defensive coverages a little bit more and probably would have played a little bit more high at the level. And one of the things they didn't do, which I think they could have done, is they really, but again, this is based on Jokic's, maybe his energy level. Instead of playing drop versus Josh Giddey, just go to the switch. If you go to the switch versus Josh Giddey, and if he beats you with getting buckets, you know, driving, and they're contested layups, then you just got to kind of live with it. Or if you force him into a step back three, you just got to live with it. And what they could have done is that would have stabilized a lot of the, when they would run the pick and roll coverages, and then they would be so far away from Jalen Smith or Terry or Vucevic down the stretch of the fourth quarter. When you leave shooters open that often, they're naturally going to develop a rhythm. And so this is also one of Jokic's biggest deficiencies defensively, like every other traditional big center. Shaq had these issues as well. When you play drop with a big that's that size, they don't always sprint out and leave the paint as quickly as you would like them to, in part because they just don't have the mobility to be able to do that consistently. Now, Wemby, Bam Adebayo, Anthony Davis, you know, those are the players that, like, you watch and see. They can do that fairly consistently, but even they will get cooked in isolation. And so Jokic was staying too far back in the drop, and then by the time he recovered or somebody showed and recovered, it was too late. Now, for me, what should have happened, and Jokic talked about this in a post-game interview, they got to the point where they were a half a step late on all their rotations. And if you watch last night's game, what should have happened is, if you're going to play drop, just pre-rotate to the shooter, and then you rotate back across the board. But then that takes some defensive discipline. It takes effort. But instead of just giving up wide open three, that's going to require Jokic, Murray, off the bench, Valanciunas, or Bruce Brown, whoever it was. You have to be able to sprint and recover and get back to a spot with a proper closeout. Again, one of the issues is when you close out, you got to close out with your base underneath you and hands all the way fully extended. Because if your base isn't underneath you and you're lunging or you're overstepping, then at that point it's a pump fake and it's a drive-by. When you close out, you got to have your feet underneath you, your hips got to be sound, and you got to be able to extend and gather, and then you got to be able to shuffle out, and then that way, if they do try to beat you off the dribble, at least you're in position. Last night, the fundamentals were just all over the place. And I agree. This is the other point. Noam said that I think we need to accept that the Nuggets just won't give 100% effort every regular season game. Unfortunately, that's the difference between Denver and OKC. Full agree. That's also the other part of this. Now, I'll talk about this more on the other side, because I think there's something also to be taken from this that I think can be a little bit more encouraging for folks as we're getting on through the year. We'll talk about all that and more here at Locked On Nuggets. If you're a business owner, here's the truth. SaaS promised to make work easier, but now the average company is buried by hundreds of apps that slow down your teams and simply don't work together. That's not SaaS. That's SAD, software as a disservice. That's why you need Rippling. Rippling is the unified platform for global HR, payroll, IT, and finance, all in one place. They've helped millions of businesses replace a mess of disconnected tools with one system designed to give leaders clarity, speed, and control. Now, everything from onboarding to payroll to IT access, it all runs automatically and perfectly in sync with Rippling. It's seriously simple to use, and it gives companies one source of truth for their people, data, and everything they touch. Now, whether you want to run an entire HR, IT, or finance operation as one, or just fill in the gap with your software stack, Rippling can help do it all. Now, and right now, you can get 6 months free when you go to rippling.com/LockedOnNBA. Learn more at rippling.com/LockedOnNBA. That's rippling.com/LockedOnNBA for 6 months free. This episode is brought to you by PrizePicks. You and I make decisions every day, but on PrizePicks, being right can get you paid. Don't miss any of the excitement of this sports season. Whether you're following the NBA, NFL, or both, there's no better time to jump in on the action. If you haven't tried it yet, PrizePicks is the simplest way to play. Just pick more or less on at least 2 player stats, and if you get them right, you win. It takes less than 60 seconds to make your lineup, and you can play anywhere. PrizePicks operates, including California, Texas, and Georgia. Now, I've been using PrizePicks for both NFL Sundays and NBA tip-offs, and it keeps every single game exciting. I love picking my favorite players, especially for the Denver Nuggets. I know very well going into games based on who they're playing, hey, you can expect this kind of baseline. And you can do the NFL as well. Patrick Mahomes, Bo Nix. The new stack feature is a game changer. You can now pick more on steps, points, threes, and assists in the same lineup. Plus, if one of your player leaves early with an injury, the injury reboot saved my lineup from a loss. So download the PrizePicks app today and use code LOCKEDONNBA to get $50 in lineups after you play your first $5 lineup. That's code LOCKEDONNBA for $50 in lineups after your first $5 lineup. PrizePicks. It's good to be right. We'll be back for more here on Locked On Nuggets. We are back here for the second segment of Locked On Nuggets. Thank y'all so much. The number one network. Y'all, please, if you're watching this on YouTube, give us a like, share, and subscribe. We are on the way to 15,000 subscribers. If you're listening to this on the audio side, give us a 5-star review. That way more and more people can listen to the great content being made here at Locked On Nuggets. So the reason why I wanted to bring the Nets game up from 2023 up with you all is just to give you a reminder that you're going to have moments like this in the regular season. But what we saw in the playoffs, both in 23 and last year, is that when the Nuggets need to turn their defense up, they will. And they'll execute at an extremely high level. Last night was I think a conversion of multiple events. The Bulls were on a 5-game losing streak. The Nuggets were on a 7-game winning streak. They just got back home off a road trip. The Nuggets kind of eased into the game. They weren't making their own shots to start the game off. The Bulls didn't want to get embarrassed in Denver. They're playing versus the better team. They came out smoking from 3, purposeful. Every action was quick and decisive. The Nuggets were not that. And then when the game was kind of still a game, the second quarter starts, and the Bulls take advantage of the fact that the Jonas Valanciunas is very slow-footed. Jalen Pickett did not have good minutes played yesterday, and they just absolutely tortured the Nuggets in transition. They were being extremely aggressive with the Nuggets around the rim. There were a lot of fouls and a lot of things that were either late or not called yesterday, and that really did shift a whole lot in the game. Like, for instance, Jokic, there was a play where Tim Hardaway Jr., he goes up for a layup. It looks like he got fouled. falls hard down to the ground, no call. They then sprint up the floor. Jalen Smith gets the ball. Jokic goes straight up, but I think because he was slightly turned and went straight up, then the referee called a foul, and now the game flips from where it could have been a 2-pointer for the Nuggets. It's now 3 points for the Bulls, and it's a 5-point swing in a game that's kind of imbalanced. And when they got late in the game yesterday, the Jokic was going really crazy, and he started scoring at a very high level. Jokic started the game off, I think, 1 of 7, which isn't great. But then in the second half, and from the second quarter on, I believe Jokic went 12 of 20 for the rest of the game. And he was 8 of 13 in the second half. So he started cooking. He was 6 of 7 from the free throw line, 1 of 2 from 3 in the second half. He had 8 rebounds, 4 assists in the second half. But there were just 2 plays with Jokic that I don't know if I necessarily blame him. But again, it was just the same thing that Dorian Finney-Smith and them would do with Jokic when you space the floor out. The first one was Cam Johnson gets a mismatch late in the fourth quarter where he has Vucevic that is in the post, and Jokic is like overly concerned with the back down, and he just doesn't want to give up an easy bucket around the rim. So at that point, he's kind of like slow playing it in between the two of them, and when you're slow playing in the middle of no man's land, you're not committing to either, you're putting yourself in a very tenuous situation. And so at that point, Vuce simply passes it out, and then all of a sudden from there, you get a wide open bucket, kind of. It's contested, but it's open for Kevin Huerter. He makes the 3 over the top. And so now it's kind of like, all right, we're kind of back in another do or die situation a little bit. And then Jokic goes down. Like I said, he makes that 3-pointer that puts them back in the spot and back in the game. But it's just multiple things. And then the last play of the game that really cost the Nuggets was the play simply where Jokic is playing drop coverage. Vooch is 1 of 7 from 3 at this point. They leave Vooch at the top of the key, wide open, no pre-rotate because they didn't want to leave the other shooters. And Vooch makes a just absolutely banger 3. And that also changed the game. So it's just 2 plays like that. Jokic is a little late on contest. It's a 3 for Kevin Huerter. Jokic is scoring on the other end. But then Vucevic gets a great-looking 3 right at the top of the key. They run the pick and roll. There's 38 seconds left. Chicago's up 1. All you need to get is 1 stop, just 1, and the Nuggets aren't able to do it. So it's really unfortunate. This last play I'm looking at it now, Kevin Huerter runs the pick and roll, and I just think it's tough, man. They ran like a kind of a not an empty side pick and roll. They ran a pick and roll with 1 in between, so there was a corner man. And so Vooch, if Jamal Murray flies out, then it's Ayo Dosunmu who is going to have a wide open 3-pointer. So again, I think they should have played the coverage differently. And even in this moment, again, it's kind of hard to overreact here. I do think Aaron Gordon, instead of giving him the middle of the floor, if you simply flip your hips and you ice the screen instead, and you force him to go the opposite way, then there's more players available to you on the right side of the court that could rotate, and then that way you get back in place and you recover and replace from that point on. So, yeah, they just didn't do it, and it's unfortunate, obviously, but I think these are just basic defensive adjustments that they can make, and as Jokic said, they were just a half a step behind all night. And I think the Nuggets just are not a good enough defensive team, even though they're good. They're not good enough. They can just kind of sit on their hands and feet and then, hope for the best from there. But by the way, y'all, 66 bench points for the Bulls last night. So this is per Opta stats. Nikola Jokic, Jamal Murray, and Aaron Gordon last night, 94 points combined, 39 rebounds combined, 17 assists combined. The last trio of NBA teammates to reach those numbers in a non-overtime game was the Lakers' Wilt Chamberlain, Jerry West, and Happy Hairston on January 24th, 1971. That's the last time 3 teammates had 94 more points, 39 or more rebounds, and 17 or more assists, and the Nuggets lost the game. And they lost the game because the Bulls bench went haywire, and they just didn't have enough counters to deal with what the Bulls were doing, especially from a shooting standpoint and the defensive pressure that they were allowed to get away with that really, really, truly flip the script of the game. But the good news is Cam Johnson looks like he might be back. We'll talk about all that and more here at Locked On Nuggets. Your ambition just met its match. With Robinhood, you play for the win, not just on game day, every day. Locking in on every opportunity, beating your PR, beating it again. Channel that drive into your money. Robinhood puts you in control of your money. Trade stocks and EFTs, options, futures, and cryptos, all in one platform. You can now build and execute your own trades from a desktop with Robinhood Legend Advanced Tools. Or take advantage of the new Robinhood Strategies with a tailored portfolio managed by a team of experts. You expect more from yourself. Expect more from your money. Get started today at Robinhood.com/yourmoney. Again, that's Robinhood.com/yourmoney. Your money, your move. Let's be real. Making excuses doesn't solve anything. We've all heard them before. It's just stress. I'm tired. It happens to everyone sometime. But when it comes to performance, sometimes your body just needs a little extra support. And that's where Rugiet comes in. Rugiet.com offers fast-acting, doctor-prescribed treatments for ED, designed to help you stop making excuses and start making moves. Right? Rugiet makes it easy to get started. You just connect with a board-certified doctor 100% online, so no awkward waiting rooms and no in-person appointments. It's prescribed. Your treatment shipped discreetly straight to your door. So visit Rugiet.com/LockedOnNBA. That's RUGIET.com/LockedOnNBA to get 15% off your first order. That's RUGIET.com/LockedOnNBA. And don't forget to use our code LockedOnNBA so they know we sent you. Rugiet, stop making excuses and start making moves. We'll be back for the final segment here at Locked On Nuggets. We're back for the final segment of Locked On Nuggets. The bench points, man, that's a big story, 66-9. That obviously is what flipped the game. And something to note, when they lost to the Warriors, they lost because of the three-point. Steph Curry had 35 points in that second half, and overtime, lost to the three-point battle. When they lost to the Portland Trailblazers made some really, really key jumpers. Now, there was a lot of fouls that were not called at the end of the game that might have dictated pace. But, look, this is what the NBA is, man. The Nuggets can still get got. And I think that's what these losses should prove. As great as they are, and they're great, they can still be got. So you got to make sure to show up with your best every single day. But the good news is, y'all, Cam Johnson, he had a day. Cam Johnson had a really good game offensively. He looked like he kind of settled in a little bit to who he is, settled in to just how good he could potentially be for this team. You know, on the year, he's only averaging 8 points, 3 rebounds, and 2 assists. He's shooting 28.9% from three, 83% from the free throw line, just 38% from the field. So not great. But last night, 19 points, 4 rebounds, 3 assists. He was 6 of 12 from the field, 5 of 7 from three, and 2 of 2 from the free throw line. It's really just this simple. Cam is going to have a lot of advantageous opportunities as a shooter and scorer this year. It's completely up to him to take advantage of that. And he did yesterday. He really did. And when Christian Brown gets back and they can kind of refine and rediscover their jump shot together, I think the starting lineup is going to be even better, especially offensively, than what it is. And I think his defense was mostly good yesterday. But, again, it's just everything got so out of whack. I don't know who had the best defensive game yesterday for Denver. But another note, y'all, the Nuggets are on pace currently still, even with yesterday's loss, to win 64 games this year. Let that sink in. The Nuggets are on pace to potentially win 64 games. Now, I'm not going to lie to y'all. If you would have told me that going into this year, the Nuggets had a chance to do that, I just don't know how much I would have believed you because, that's crazy, obviously. But the thing is that if you look at the way the schedule drops for them, you look at how they're winning and such so far, they're winning 78.5% of their games. Like, that's really good. But now it's simply going to come down to this. can you continue to find new ways to win? And the Nuggets so far this year, they have had a 12 or more point lead in every game they played this year except for last night. So they've shown consistent dominance. They've shown the ability to score. They've shown the ability to defend. They've shown individual greatness from Jokic, Gordon, Murray, Hardaway. Like, they've been able to put together really good strings. But it's just the small things in communication that you have to have consistently. And when you don't, it puts everybody in a really big bind. But 64 wins is crazy, y'all. And if you look at how the team has performed, like, they're playing well. But surely there's another level or two that they have access to, but they just don't have the ability and or the space to be able to do that. So I'm actually really excited as the year goes on, as chemistry continues to improve, how they'll continue to improve the communication between each other, the defensive intensity, offensively, how do you continue to find solves for what defenses are throwing at you, and how do you get more and more people involved on a possession-by-possession basis? That way it doesn't have to just be Jokic. So they're on the way to having a really successful season. But I think this year the difference is the clutch play this year has been really indicative of how the other team is shooting and performing. And I think if you go back to the Wizards game last year, the defense was all over the place. If you go back to the Bulls game last night, but even you go back to the Warriors game, you go back to the Portland Trail Blazers game, it is just small defensive communication issues forcing the Nuggets to play bad defense for stretches. The defense in the clutch has to be tight because the communication is tight, because we understand each other. We know where each other is supposed to be. We're looking out for each other. But when you have performances like last night, I just think that changes the paradigm for just how good you could be overall as a team, given some of the deficiencies and such they're going to have. But if you look at the schedule, y'all, it's all on the table. Tomorrow night, Wednesday night, they play the Pelicans. Friday, they play the Houston Rockets. That's going to be a great game. And then they come back to Denver for Sacramento. And then they got Memphis. And from there, they're going to have San Antonio, Phoenix, Dallas, Indiana. I mean, I don't know what their record is going to be. Getting to this 10-win thing is going to be a real stretch. The Nuggets have never won 10 games in a row in the Nikola Jokic era. But what's funny is, let me make sure I know what I'm talking about here. If you look at the standings, the Detroit Pistons have won 10 in a row right now, and they might get to 12. So it's like, the Nuggets just can't seem to get right. OKC's won 6 in a row. They just cannot seem to get right for long stretches of the year to be able to secure a lot of those victories. But I like what I've seen from the Nuggets this far. I like what I've seen from the defense. I like what I've seen from the offense. Look, they're not converting the shots as well as you want them to, and the offense is still maybe the best in the league, if not number 2, behind like the Houston Rockets, who have a 40% offensive rebound rate. The defense has been top 3, top 5 for a large part of the year. Well, again, how you sustain that is effort and communication. So they're really small things that the Nuggets need to continue to clean up, and this is how you win 60-plus games in the league. And I think they can do it. And honestly, at this point, y'all, Lord willing, they're healthy, I think they will win about that many games. Now, that's crazy to think about. Really crazy given how difficult everything has been to get to for the last few years. But the talent is there. And even honestly, like, if you look at the performance the bench had, I don't think they're going to get outscored by 57 points again this year. A lot of that, they were just raining threes from everywhere. And I'm talking about going out of bounds. Like, it was just insane. I'm watching Javon Carter get the ball in the corner, and it's just like sailing out of bounds. Yak. And at that point, you're like, you got to shake their hand. Good job. You're an NBA team. You beat us. You were better today. You won the math game. But I think the Nuggets can take away from this that we have obviously a floor that we're at, But how do we get to the ceiling? A lot of that's going to be based on communicating defensive principles and making sure we can work things out together. Y'all, that's going to do it for this episode of Locked On Nuggets. Hope you enjoyed today's episode. We'll have more with Matt Moore and Ryan coming soon. Y'all, this is Swiper. This is Locked On Nuggets. I see you on the other side.